Independent School District and the Rouse High School present the Rouse Band and Color Guard.
My name is Lee Crochet. I am the first band director at Rouse High School. We started the program with 35 students on the roster, and we wound up with about 43. Everybody counted.
Named for a long time the Andrew High School principal, Charlie Rouse. The Rouse High School band this year is comprised of freshmen only. The band and school will continue to add a grade level each year and will become a full 4-year school in the fall of 2012.
We had like one of each instrument. It was really a challenge. First office I had, the school wasn't built yet, and I was in there with Coach Mann, and I was in there with our first principal, Nancy Scott, first librarian, our first counselor, and our first assistant principal, John Graham, who is now one of the area superintendents. So it's a pretty interesting start to Rouse. School-wide, there was only about 300 kids in the whole school, like 350. So I had a class in the morning, which was the band, and then percussion was in the afternoon. So director-wise, there was only 2 of us. It was myself and then Mr. Jimenez, and so he did the percussion program for 5 or 6 years. So we were the original directors, and it was kind of just us. Students were very dedicated, but very, just new. It was all so new. And that freshman class in particular had also gone to new schools almost every year. They had gone from I think Pleasant Hill Elementary opened up, and they were the new students. They went to Henry, and then they had to open Wiley. They moved around a lot. Our first football games were in the stadium at the school. In fact, I sent her a picture of the first time we ever marched to the stadium from the band hall. And so you see this one line of students. It's pretty interesting. One of the unique things about our first year, Caitlin, we didn't have a band tower.
Oh.
Yeah, Mr. Crochet, who was 5'3", was the drum major and conducted from not even a high podium, not one of the, when you build together.
Like the 10-foot?
No, it was one of the Jarvis ones that you just flip and put up.
I'm Brittany Dacey. I was at Rouse from 2009 to 2015. So my first year was numbers, and it was what we call a box show. So it was not custom designed for us. We just bought it off the shelf. And it was actually called Child's Play when we started it.
We actually bought a pre-packaged music show. It wasn't something that we got to design because those were really expensive, or at least way out of our price range at then. So we were always late bloomers, though. We were terrible beginning of the season. We were always terrible. We always pulled it off by the end. One
of the parts was tag, and there was another one that was kind of like a puzzle one.
Mentioned about 2009, we were 3A, and that was the year that we made it to the state finalists for TMEA. So we were 5th in the state in 3A on the concert band for honor bands. That was the accomplishment of that year, and that was only 2 classes. That was 9th and 10th grade.
So we started to use the Sudoku kind of reference, and so we had these giant tarps that started off with a number, and then we opened them, and they looked like the squares from Sudoku, and they were so heavy. I remember this because we didn't have prop crew, we didn't have parent help. It was like 30 kids. We didn't even have a drum major at this point. I remember putting them on chair racks and pushing them up hills. Our first competition actually was at Georgetown High School. And I remember pushing it up a hill at the end because it was in the old stadium where you had to go up really far up the hill in the back corner and just working so hard. And I remember our band president, because we had officers, we didn't have a leadership team, but our band president broke her jacket, and it was our first competition, and she was freaking out. So we were fixing that, and it was we got through it, and it was amazing.
We did really well, and people were like, "Oh, watch out for Rouse." We were still looked small, but the ability and technique, we were doing pretty well. Our
first game, I think, was against Eastside Memorial, and they paraded around the track because they're the old school band program, and the kids were like, "Whoa, they're dancing," because our kids had never danced to anything. I think that was the first year we had Hey Band. Hey Band! And they were like, "What's Hey Band? What do we do? How do we handle Hey Band?" And they were so excited about it. And so towards the end of that year, I actually was the one who brought the Wiggle-O to Rouse.
Hey band! Hey Royals! Are you ready?
2010 was more written. I think it was a little bit more of a custom show. It was Ryan George wrote it, and it was originally called Twisted Twinkle.
It had like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and all things starry at the same time. So the kids really liked that one.
The band's music program includes Starry Night, Parts 1, 2, and 3 with selections from Midnight Sonata, Silent Night, and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Size-wise, we were probably right at about 100 that year. So we went from 35 to about 70 and then to 100. So we were on our way growing.
And then we had our first drum major, Calvin Barnes. He was the first drum major of the Rouse Band. He was our only drum major, and we started to like dip our toe into leadership world because we hadn't really done much of it.
Maybe give your performance for the Area D Marching Band Contest.
My name is Shelby Mitchell. I was at Rouse between 2011 and 2015. 2011 Flurry was the first year that we had each class.
We finally had a full 4 years of students and parents. So they had certainly learned how to get it done. So it started to really take off after that Flurry year.
One story that I remember, it was really rainy that day. One of the biggest hits of the show, it just started like pouring down rain. And our show, obviously Flurry, it was about like snow and winter and stuff. So everyone kind of pretended we were playing in the snow, which was kind of fun. I vividly remember that moment.
But I do remember we had these giant panels of like snowflakes that started off covering the band.
The first time we performed at a football game, this is my freshman year, talking about like the very first time. I was kind of nervous about like how the show was gonna go. I distinctly remember having this thought while we were playing, like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. We are impacting so many people right now. Everyone is hopefully enjoying the show. And coming off the field, I just remember like seeing everyone clap.
That was like the most customized show we had had to date, where we had picked the idea and trying to make it kind of like wintry, but not super Christmassy. Definitely had more leadership in that case. And that was when we had seniors. That was the Alpha class's senior year.
I just remember the seniors being like really excited and happy to get to do this with everyone now that we had like a full band program and a full school.
So it was the first time that since I had gotten there that we actually were losing a class at the end of the year, because when I started, we just kept gaining people. We never like lost people. So that was kind of a new thing for us. I think that was the first year we had like a real band banquet. I think that was the first year that we started to like actually honor the seniors, and we got to do more of that.
It's incredible how much you remember and how much the stories of just how the band hall got the way it is, because you add stuff everywhere and you build things, and it went from nothing to what it is.
I think that was the year that we started the little boxes where you could drop in nice notes about people as they left, where you could do it during banquet and just like say nice things to them, and then kind of moving forward so they would have a keepsake. So there would be like a little cute, think old school, like elementary school Valentine's Day boxes, and then once it's made and everything, you could drop nice notes to the seniors and they would have it.
So Journey of Heroes, that was a good year. Kids got really into it.
So Journey of Heroes, that was basically this literary story. It was a depiction of the literary story of a hero, the rise and fall of a hero and everything.
I think technically the band got a lot better that year because we focused on the right things.
So Journey of Heroes, my sophomore year, I remember there was a giant flagpole in the middle of the field. I just remember I had to put the flag on the flagpole and like raise it up at the very beginning of the show.
What I remember for that is that stupid flag going up and down the pole. We had a flag that we like raised the pole, and then because it was supposed to be like the rise of the hero and then the fall, and then we changed the flag. And I remember Shelby Mitchell, who would become drum major the next year.
And I always panicked so much trying to get like the safety pins onto the holders and like making sure like, oh, is it gonna fall down? Did I do it right? I hope this goes well.
I remember spending like so much time helping her figure out how to put the flag on and raise the stupid thing. And then we had twins that were in the color guard, and Ashley was one of them, and like helping her trying to like mess with the flag.
But that's, to be expected. Nothing ever goes as planned, at least as props go.
We went to BOA San Antonio. The flag didn't go up the last time. But then that night at the game, we did it and we had a taller, like not 12 feet, because of all the restrictions, pole, and it went up and we were like, but we were so excited also because it was the last performance of that show.
I think that show was my favorite music that we ever played. I think it was the most engaging, probably one of the more difficult shows that we had during my time there, at least.
The next band in conference we're playing is the Rouse High School Band from Leander, Texas.
So this was Playing with Fire. I remember the show. This was probably my favorite one that we did. And this was right around like Hunger Games and everything. So we had like the Katniss dress for the guard and had like the fire, the fire queen or whatever. That was actually when this was the first year, I think. Yeah, this was the first year that we started the rhythm dance company. I remember in between classes going outside with Mr. Morgan painting tarps, just painting lots of tarps to make it look like fire and just doing all of the things so that we had fire for everything. We had these huge columns that had fabric, actually relatively expensive, like silk fabric, but with a floor fan facing up. And I think this was when Neil Sanchez started props. I think this was his first year, but I had to like hand place every fabric every time. So I had to like get on the drum major podium and place the fabric for every competition. It was a lot. There was like 11 columns, but we get so excited because we could turn on the fire and turn off the fire.
And then Clockworks, that had like Doctor Who music, and we got better at the visuals that year. I remember that we did some tarps on the field, and it was cool. Costuming was good. It was kind of like steampunk idea, so a lot of browns and yellows and rust colors. We wound up building a clock on the field in the middle of the field, so kids like that one. It was a little dangerous though because we had so many props that the kids tripped over them sometimes.
I remember there was like a sound effect between like transition times. It was like the cuckoo from a cuckoo clock. And I remember always conducting that part and then hearing the audience laugh behind me when that part came back. So lots of GE there.
I have one like iconic memory in my mind. Sam Acosta was a drum major then, so I would have him hit the start button for the Met, and I would like listen, and I'm sitting here like scrub painting while I'm trying to run brass class and just trying to do whatever we can. Parents were still becoming more and more helpful as we were getting through that, and we were getting better and better about actually asking for help.
My name is Maddie Moore. I was in the Rouse Band from all 4 years of high school, 2015 through 2019. I know the show Fragile itself was about, the journey and perseverance of this Joshua tree in the desert.
My name is Aaron Bouchard. I went to Rouse from 2015 to 2019, and I was in band all 4 years. Like, it was a story about the day in the life of the Joshua tree and like how the third movement was a rainstorm and it was really, really pretty.
My name is Aaron Gant, and I was an associate director at Rouse from 2015 to 2018. My favorite part of the show was when the blue flags came out, or in the ballad. It was supposed to symbolize the rainstorm coming and all that.
But it would rain and it was cold every weekend. It was miserable.
Like the very first day of band camp with everybody, meeting the drum majors for the first time, I remember that they all lined up and started talking about why the journey we were depicting in this show was particularly important to them.
I'm Grant Doolittle. I was at Rouse from fall of 2015 to spring of 2019. It was definitely formative for my class because we felt like our freshman year wasn't what we wanted it to be as a whole, mostly as our class.
The vibe was a little bit different my freshman year, obviously, with that kind of older set of directors before things started changing a lot, but we did start the year with a brand new percussion director, Emily Tannert, I think now Tannert Patterson.
So I was at Rouse from 2015 until spring of 2018, so 3 school years.
She was awesome. She was one of my very first role models to kind of push me to recognize my own set of responsibilities.
And then the first time I stood in the band hall in full ensemble, and we arrived at the hit in the pre-show. And just the amount of, suddenly like 3 times as much sound as I was used to was coming at me. It was definitely a really cool feeling as a director to go, wow, we can really put out a product here. We have something to work with here. The thing about Fragile was that we knew it was the last year before the school was going to split. Everyone wanted to make the most of having a really large ensemble.
I interviewed for a counseling position, and I was just really fortunate that it was at Rouse. It was one of those bittersweet things.
And then obviously that was a tough year, I think, for all the kids.
I didn't really get to tell the kids because it wasn't offered to me until the last day of the semester. The kids had already left.
And then, of course, Mr. Crochet left at Christmas break and moved into the counseling office.
Those last 3 years were pretty emotional for me because I knew that it was kind of coming to an end. I did do the musical in January because I knew that they would be struggling. And that's when Mr. Spicer was kind of coming on board.
And Mr. Spicer came on board, which was great.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeremy Spicer, and I was director of bands at Rouse High School in the spring of 2016. You may be going, spring of 2016. Yes, one semester.
He was the best interim happen. Rouse did not skip a beat.
And there was an interesting transition where the previous director of bands took on a different role at the high school as a counselor.
That entire spring semester was one of the most enjoyable concert seasons I've ever had in my life. Just because Mr. Spicer and who he is, what he cares about first is like how the students are doing.
What I had always known to be true proved itself once again, that students just want to be great at what they do. And they want someone to be excited to be great with them. And that's what we did.
Which was really important at Rouse because the students were not doing great at all. The clicks were really, really powerful.
2016, the first thing I wrote down was uncomfortable. For a lot of the band, it was very uncomfortable, especially the upperclassmen who prior to that year had never really had to put the level of effort or attention to detail that they did.
That was just, we came a long way together as a group, and sometimes kicking and screaming, but most of the time not.
I am Nick Temporali. I was involved with the Rouse Band from 2015 all the way through 2019. He kind of like started to kick in these different ideas, different like terminologies, like everything kind of shifted. It was more detail focused on why we were doing what we were doing.
We focused on just developing the individual musician and making music, and it was fun.
Like if you weren't a part of like a specific friend group, you didn't really have a place in the band, which I really, really hated. Mr. Spicer immediately recognized that and told us that it has to stop and got help to get rid of it.
When we performed, and you could see it in their eyes, like when it was done, like we checked off one and then checked off the other, and I was like, we got this, keep going. You saw them about halfway through the third piece, like their shoulders just fell and they were just enjoying performing. And that's where with me, it's like, yep, here we are.
We found out that Mr. Spicer was going to be leaving us before the semester ended. And that was pretty hard, not gonna lie.
But there was just so much change throughout that entire 12 months because I was new, Mr. Gant was new, Mr. Flores was new.
We lost Mr. Crochet. We lost Mr. Morgan at the same time we lost Mr. Spicer. He left to go to Seattle at the end of the year. So we were getting 2 new band directors. We also had a new percussion director.
So that's 3 out of 5 major directors, all brand new. And then impending school split, head director change at mid-year. I mean,
I heard Mr. Rob was joining and I was like, oh, okay. So another band director, here we go.
And we got Mr. Rob and Mr. Johnstone. So basically every position changed within the course of 12 months, some of them twice.
We got Mr. Rob and Mr. Johnstone, and everything changed. Like nothing was the same from old Rouse.
When Mr. Rob showed up, everybody, or at least a large portion of the band, was very, very skeptical about how it was going to go. Because we had just like experienced a great semester and we had done great at UIL and we were having fun in band. The person that made that happen left and we were like, oh no.
And so having Rob and Johnstone coming in and pushing us to be better, I think was what, my class wanted.
I wanted to make sure there was a team that was being brought in, and that's what Mr. Rob did when he showed up.
Hello, my name is Jason Robb. I was the director of bands at Rouse High School from 2016 to the spring of 2020.
When we had Spicer, that was the closest to an introduction to Rob that we could have gotten, I think, and it prepared us.
For me, it was truly an incredible experience. And I'm not speaking in hyperbole. It really was an incredible experience to step in there.
I know that we definitely had a drive and a sense of like grit and let's work towards a goal more than I ever experienced my freshman year.
Leander, Texas.
please welcome the Rouse High School Marching Band.
It was such an interesting time of newness for everyone.
So from the student standpoint, they had already had a lot of new faces coming in and telling them to do this and do that and do whatever.
The one thing I'll say about the students is they really embraced it. I mean, they had went through a lot of change. Lee left in December, Jeremy came in, Jeremy left in May, Jason came in, and they were just wanting some consistency. And I do think that's the biggest thing that Jason and Ryan both brought was just consistency.
My name is Ryan Johnstone, Director of Bands at Rouse High School. Previously was an Associate Director beginning in 2016. We made a lot of headway early on, pushing to those early contests.
And so it was kind of hard for them to fully buy in. And there was definitely I would say honestly, the seniors bought in because they wanted to be a great senior class, but the sophomore class that year is the one that kind of stepped up to the plate really strong.
I felt that marching season, my sophomore year, was there was so much going on, a lot of change as well, like you saw on the field when we were trying to do drill and stuff like that.
Things that were hard were the school had just split, so a lot of students had left to go to Glenn High School.
My class literally went down a division because of Glenn opening. And so then it was an even bigger struggle to get people.
And just friendships being broken and those type of things. There was also a lot of turnover in directors those first couple of years.
I thought we made a lot of progress. And then I felt like at the end of the year, we actually kind of dropped off a little bit.
I remember that year we had a lot of repeated work. We were doing the same sets over and over again without making any progress.
The senior class, I think, had 9 band directors or something that first year that I was there.
I didn't really know Mr. Robb or Mr. Johnstone for half of the first semester. They came in, and as a drum major, I interacted with them and stuff, but it was still, it felt very weird to have them there for a while because it felt honestly like they were just going to leave again.
And it's when they really started to do a lot more with the student culture, having weekly leadership meetings. That's not something that had been done in the prior year. And I think all those things really helped to develop the culture of that.
When Mr. Robb came in, we had the leadership camp with him. We did that whole thing.
Every single day after that initial, first day of band camp, that had completely changed. And I was becoming a part of a family.
And then there was one day, we had been doing early morning practices that year, and everybody was just kind of going through the motions, kind of getting through the reps that Mr. Robb was calling out to us, not really doing that great, but not doing terribly. And then Mr. Robb, I don't know if he would remember doing this, but he just picked up the mic and said, "Guys, I'm not going anywhere. Let's try and do this better." And I mean, it was kind of crazy to hear, but also I really respected his realness. And getting the verbal confirmation that he was I'm around for the long haul was really, really important for us because we just felt like he was going to show up and then not have a good time as a teacher and then leave. But that's not what happens. So that was really cool.
That year was the first time I got called out directly by name from the tower. And it was by Rob. And I remember I was that shook me so much in the time. And I was one, I didn't realize that they paid that much attention to the individual. And 2, damn, why did I get called out? That definitely pushed me to be better. I remember after that moment, I was okay, I'm never going to miss my dot again.
So when you look at the glass images and you imagine the kind of resilience and faith that those kids had to have to stay with the band program in the face of all of that, that's what really sticks out to me in that first chunk of time that I was at Rouse. Was not necessarily what the directors were able to do, but the amount of faith that the students in the community placed in the administration and in the staff that all of these changes were going to be for the best.
But Mr. Spicer did get our show lined up for us.
The initial idea was to have these stained glass windows, which we had around the field.
So, it was the first year everybody had started using front drops. So it was the first year we had front drops, and then we had all of these backdrops, and everything was coordinated.
We went to the TMC Marching Classic, the Texas Marching Classic, and we made finals. And we were lining up to go into retreat, and I realized that no one in the band had ever been to a retreat like that. So they didn't know how to line up and go to retreat. The drill instructors and I can remember looking at Ryan Almond. He was we've never been to retreat before. And so the drum majors and Ryan Almond and I were trying to teach the band how to line up for retreat as we were going on. It was such a mess.
The guard uniforms were coordinated with everything else. And that was one thing that Mr. Spicer had left us with, was this incredible palette of visual design that was just gorgeous.
We had to be over the top colorful in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what that was going to be initially, but I knew that I wanted it to be over the top.
And that was the first thing every judge said, percussion judges, visual judges, music judges. Everyone went out of caption to go, wow, this set is just so clean and it's so striking and it's so beautiful.
The next band in Conference 5A is the Rouse High School Band. Their program is entitled
I was interested in doing some kind of Eastern influence thing.
So that was another continuation of sort of this mix of modern and traditional.
We came out of band camp that year with 9 pages of drill. That's all we had. You know, that was a state year.
And obviously what always stands out about Lotus was it was the Rouse Band's first state appearance.
To feel that behind, you know, in the year that you're really trying to go for this, you know, make the state contest for the first time, it was pretty challenging.
That was the year the school split really hit the program because, you know, the previous year we'd had this massive senior class. You take this group of kids who's just constantly kind of had to go through these changes and this rebuilding and always having something operating against them.
Originally with that show, we were going to start off with no color and develop into color.
I remember Mr. Gant, we had a staging day where like Mr. Gant and I basically just Mr. Gant, not me, completely on the spot restaged the entire ballad. And after that, like the next weekend, our score went up like 5 placements. We just kept pushing, and it was like we were just trying to get to the state marching contest to provide that opportunity for our students.
I think I was talking to Nick Temporale about that year one time, and he summed it up perfectly. He said it felt like we were tripping all the way until we landed at state.
Lotus was a beautiful show. It had a lot of really great moments. It was a very difficult show. We still had our same writer from the year before, Jay Bocook. Lots of different key areas, lots of harmonic demand in particular.
Like the entire season went well, but it felt like frantic and like we were trying so hard to do so many things all the time. Because that year was the first time that I actually felt like we were getting pushed to like, we have to like, it's our turn now.
I know right after one of our performances in the Alamo Dome, we were being interviewed by Mr. Maldonado, and I was so overwhelmed with the adrenaline that was going on. And the performance we just did, I was really emotional for some reason. I think the root of his question was, how is Lotus kind of a metaphor for what Rouse was going through at the time? The more I think about it, I think maybe he was trying to get me to talk about everything I've been talking about, the director changes, the perseverance we've had to go through in our own playing and shifting our mindset entirely.
So it was an amazing year. I'll tell you that the leadership team that year was probably one of the best leadership teams I've ever taught. It was the kids were just amazing.
By my senior year, the leadership team definitely had the mentality of like, we're going to have fun being really, really good at what we do.
The first thing that comes to mind about 2017, honestly, the first unison concert F that we played in summer band. It kind of gives me chills thinking about it because that's when you kind of know this is going to happen. If you're teaching well, it should happen, right? But the first concert F that we played was shockingly better than the previous year.
The kids had such a drive that year. I think what made a huge difference in that year was that one, it was our own show, it was our own product, and so we were personally invested in that. And two, the music was fun.
The biggest thing that changed, like the most important change that happened that year, was the student leadership started taking initiative in places that they weren't told to do so. After school sectionals, like without like asking Rob, like we all just like showed up and started practicing together. We started doing, even in concert season, we started doing extra sectionals.
We had gone in there and we knew that like all the work that we had done that year it was possible for us to, make finals and, be a top 10 band at UIL. And we went in, we like woke up at like 4:30 because we had an 8 a.m. Performance time. And I remember everybody like just being so zoned in and being like, okay, this is everything in this year has led up to this moment. We need to have like a good show and we're capable of having a good show. It's just a question of, are we going to be in the right mental state to do that? And I remember we went and performed, and afterwards the feeling on the field was just like, yeah, that was a really good performance.
I just felt that entire marching season, we did so well in how we practiced that when we did start performing at these competitions, we started seeing the results. That area performance, I think, was our best performance, or probably the best performance I've ever been a part of. And then obviously the feeling whenever we were sitting there and they called us being able to make state.
We went down there and they pass out envelopes and they start talking about UL. And so I pull the envelope, I pull the paper out, and I just start from the bottom and I look up. And I was expecting us to be like somewhere in like the teens, like 13 to 16, 20 or whatever. And I knew that the top 9 or top 8 or whatever were making finals. And so I go from the bottom, look up, and I got to like 10, and I thought that I had missed Rouse. So I went back to the bottom again.
I mean, I think I yelled out loud in front of all these band directors. Like, I don't remember what it was I said, but people were probably like, who's that guy? Why is he doing that?
Mr. Johnson ran out to call the meal moms to tell them that we needed to get ready to feed the kids.
But I was shocked, honestly. I knew that they were doing well, but I just didn't know what to expect. And
I ran out because I was like freaking out, didn't know what to do. And we were in the bottom of the Alamo Dome, and our cell phones weren't working. And I realized when I'm in the hallway that the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to draw for finals placements, and I wasn't in the room.
As you know, they announce bands in performance order for finals, right?
So like I run back in, and Aaron Gant is sitting in a chair, and the whole room is cleaned out already, and he's holding a thing, and his head was buried in his hands. And I was like, oh my God, he drew first. Like, we're going to go on first.
And I showed Jason the 10th thing, and I was like, holy crap, we're like the last band to go on,
And he looks at me and he holds up a card, and it was 10th because we went on last. Like, he drew last.
And then we drew to go on last, which was even crazier.
For Rouse, especially leading all the way up to that, there have been a lot of times that for sure the band had been kicked in the teeth. You know what I'm saying?
We knew, and we went back up to the stands because we wanted to see what the kids' reaction would be.
It was such a cool moment for me, but then I realized that they were about to announce to everyone else. So I grabbed Mr. Gant, I grabbed Mr. Johnson, and we went up to in front of the kids, and we had to totally compose ourselves because they were about to announce.
The kids wanted to make it, but so many times they had not, that they were prepared, and what was really cool was to know that it would be the last, and I kind of get choked up talking about it now, but what was really cool was to know that we were going to be the last name called, and we got to watch them squirm the whole time.
And they got to 9. I don't know who they announced, and we're just sitting there, and the kids, you can tell they're like, "There's only one more band. There's only one more band."
The Rouse High
And then they said Rouse, and those kids, the look on their face and just how happy they were made it all worth it.
Walked into my office a couple weeks later, and there on my keyboard was the 10th placard. So this is that card still from that day.
We went on 3rd, literally one of the earliest times you can go, and we're also going on last. So that day for the students was almost a 24-hour day.
And then to be that successful at the end of the season, I think, was pretty massive.
And the Rouse High School Marching Band.
2018 was kind of crazy because we had to pivot for some copyright issues. So we kind of had a show plan, and we had to kind of change our plan. It ended up being one of my favorite shows that I've ever taught. The music was amazing.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Wolf, and I've been an assistant band director at Rouse from 2018 to now, 2020. When I first got to Rouse in 2018, I was immediately impressed with how well the students rehearsed, how prepared every single student was whenever they came to summer band, the leadership team, and how they just took charge and were very proactive.
One of the things that was really fun about that is that Mr. Johnson and Mr. Gant and I, when we were putting it together, decided that we were going to use this as like a great training year, give a lot of students the opportunity, as many kids on the field as possible, just try and do a lot of really fun stuff.
That was a year for a new level of expectation for the individual performer, because we started doing pass-offs, like pretty hardcore pass-offs, where they're having to do, step outs and visual responsibilities and play, memorize, making sure they're doing their stagger breathing, all these things.
In American Tapestries, we had completely restructured the way we did rehearsals. So instead of the directors telling everybody what to do and the drum majors just flapping our arms and kind of following directions, the responsibilities had almost shifted entirely onto us and the DI team, and we would call the sets and everything.
My name is Faustina Beltran, and this is my 3rd year in the Rouse Band. The first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about American Tapestries was the phrase Mr. Rubb used to tell the horns to get after that opening, grip it and rip it. And I remember that was my first of many Welcome to the Rouse Band moments.
Then I think about how great the performance, especially of the opening, was, and how effective that was. And the proof's right there. You know, it's that individual accountability that we put out there and that we made kids rise to is really what made that opening statement be like a welcome to the Rouse Band moment.
We would kind of lead rehearsals and structure it and everything, and that would allow the directors to be on the field and critique people and know exactly where we need to focus on more, which was a complete change.
I'm Sophie Klepner. I've been in the Rouse Band program since 2018. That was my favorite show so far. I loved American Tapestries. I loved the music. I still remember the choreography at the very beginning and all of that so much. And I remember having really great leaders. At least I think they were great because nothing was ever a problem.
My name is Emma. I've been in the band program for 3 years, so 2018 to 2020 right now. So I remember our culture was really good. I remember the show for me was really hard, but it was really fun. It's probably my favorite show because I really liked our performances and the feelings from after them.
My name is Arik Vartanyan. I have been at Rouse since 2018 and is now 2020. The thing that stood out the most was just learning the closer. So we started learning the closer of our show pretty late into the season, and it was just crunch time all the time.
My favorite memory from 2018 was the BOA exhibition performance at the very end of the season. We were fortunate enough to win our class at BOA San Antonio, and we got to perform the show one last time at the very end of BOA San Antonio finals.
I remember just standing in front of the band at that exhibition performance as their band director. I mean, it was awesome.
And just to see the kids on the field one more time and get to participate in retreat at the very end and breaking ranks and everything.
I mean, it's one of the most proud I've ever been of a band following through. And that was the first time I think that the Rouse Band had a prelims performance and then came through in a finals performance and laid it down.
They got to perform for probably one of the largest audiences they've ever performed for, and it was so awesome to watch them soak it all in and enjoy it and really deliver that performance, that final performance that night.
I really vividly remember BOA San Antonio exhibition and just finishing, and Dylan Presley told me afterwards that she saw me with the biggest smile on my face, and I still dream about that sometimes.
My name is Elijah Woodson. I am a junior now, so I've been here for basically 3 years. We were waiting for results, and then because Rouse, being the cool people that we are, we started the wave. It was so cool. We started the wave, and then it went around in between a few bands, but then the entire stadium was just doing it, thousands of people, and I was like, dude, this is the most fun thing ever.
I was standing outside of the box truck after we had just finished performing our very last time at the Alamo Dome. I just kind of looked at the Alamo Dome and then I just broke. I just started crying my eyes out. It was disgusting. I feel like out of all my 4 years, that was the moment that I realized hey, we did a really cool thing.
Definitely the most memorable moment was senior year at the Dripping Springs drumline competition. We were lined up in the retreat formation for the drumline competition, and they started they called out the top 5, and they were calling out 5th place, 4th place, 3rd place. And when they got to 2nd place and hadn't said our name, we were me, Aaron, and Eli were just we were so giddy. We were holy.
It was really powerful for me because I was looking around and I was seeing all of the people in the freshman, sophomore, junior class doing all of the running around and fixing things that I had been doing for 4 years. And it made me realize okay, so this band program's in really good hands. The leadership team that's going to be taking the torch is going to be really good.
Probably my favorite piece during concert band was Entry March of the Boyers, just because as a trombone player, I generally don't get the fun parts. And I definitely did get to play the fun parts, and I got to play loud, which as a low brass player, that's pretty much my one desire in band.
When we participated in the honor band recordings in the spring of 2019, that band was really special, and that I had decided to do something that was a little non-traditional. You know, most places don't. That the head band director conducts the top band, the second band director directs the second band. My relationship with Mr. Johnstone and his relationship with the students was in a place where I felt like we could offer a different type of experience for our students rather than just me being the person.
And that was the year where he suggested that I take on, and we collaborate more on the top with the top band. So I would still do the second band completely, but I would also do a piece with the top band.
I think it's cool because you listen to the recording and you can definitely hear my personality in one piece and his personality in the other piece. And it was really, really neat.
That is not something that a lot of other programs do. You know, usually you don't have the kind of confidence in one another.
The two best performances that I've been a part of as a teacher was the top band performing Elsa's Procession when Mr. Johnson conducted on the very last recording concert, and then me getting back on the podium and them, the way they played the march. That whole experience, I didn't feel like the kids were burned out. I felt like they were very enriched.
I think as a teacher and as a conductor, when you really love a piece of music and you're really passionate about it, that's why it's important that you pick music that's good and that you like, is because the kids pick up on that. And I think we've always been pretty good about that at Rouse.
That was incredible. That was like one of those moments, our very last performance of it, when, you know, the chamber group in the front is just looking at each other and passing our energy back and forth.
I remember playing in Elsa's though as an assistant horn, and so that was probably like some of my favorite performances I've ever done, because like when you get done you can just like feel the energy in the room from everybody.
And then Mr. Johnstone leads us into the rest of the piece. It was like, I don't think I've ever been that engaged in a performance ever.
I thought it was going to be really, really boring and I wasn't going to enjoy it, but like that piece was like the coolest thing, and like it was just like such a, like, for the lack of a better word, overwhelming, but like overwhelmingly cool. It was something I've never experienced before.
I felt like they could go 2 or 3 more weeks and we would have been even better. And it was just a really, really enriching moment to experience those recordings together. I still listen to them probably, once every other week or whatever. It was just really cool to be able to experience that.
That one for me, professional, like the finished product of that professionally or from a musical standpoint, purely artistic, was the best moment that I've had, that I've shared with an ensemble.
Begin your performance for the finals of the UIL State Marching Band Championship.
When we got to 2019, I knew that I wanted the aesthetic to be modern and bright and colorful. I knew that I wanted the music aesthetic to be something that the kids would really enjoy.
The design ideas, we wanted, when I went to Mr. Rob's house and we had 4 or 5 different shows going back and forth, and I said, I have this show about a city idea.
At 2019, Midnight City was such a fun show to put together. You could tell that the kids loved to perform it.
Like this whole thing of city and traffic and the hustle and bustle of the city, and when the lights go out and the city comes to life and what that could be. And then Mr. Rob's eyes lit up because he's always wanted to do this whistle thing from when he was at the Scouts and the Scouts thing. And he's always wanted to figure out how, he's like, we could do this whistle thing and that. And so he immediately got excited.
I love Traffic Jam a lot. I remember at VOA Austin, some of my friends that I met at a summer camp, they came up to me while we were eating dinner and they were like, are y'all the band with the whistles? Because that's what apparently everyone was calling us.
And like the whistles, I was like, I need to have a whistle. I need to have a whistle. And like that first day when they were giving out whistles and they didn't call my name, I was like, oh my goodness, the world is over. Everything is so sad. But it was all good because I got to have a whistle when we performed at state, and I was like, I'm the coolest. I have the whistle. But it was
you were probably like one of 5 students. We took away like all the whistles.
I know. It was literally like the best feeling. I was like, oh, you didn't have a whistle? Yikes, kind of tough.
Every aspect of the show, from Blue Shades at the very beginning, just the fast-paced, high energy, all the soloists, to the ballad and how beautiful that was.
Getting to be able to be a soloist, that was really awesome, and getting to stand up on that bridge, even though I felt like I was going to fall sometimes.
And then of course Traffic Jam with the whistles. I know the students loved learning all the choreography for that and putting it all together and getting to dance a little bit and create a Traffic Jam scenery, all the way to the closer, which was Aurora Wakes, and was beautiful.
The chance to get to have a little trombone octet moment was really cool. And especially when you have Mr. Johnstone, who is a trombone player through and through, gave us the fun part because he orchestrated it, and it was a lot of fun to play.
I know that the kids enjoyed the music a lot. They may not have enjoyed marching on the tarps because they can be a little bit slippery, but I know that all in all, they loved performing that show.
Blue Shades was all about, like, if you were going to be at a club in downtown in this dark city, and all of this is going on, this and that, and
there's a lot of different scenes in Blue Shades. So you have the city waking up at nighttime in the intro, and then we go into Blue Shades, and there's hustle and there's bustle and there's things going all around the city and life, and everywhere you look there's different life happening. So you have like a jazz club where you see like this tenor saxophone player playing, and you have you go in and there's like this virtuosic clarinet player and everyone's dancing, and you're going into a dance club, and it's just like tear the roof off, nighttime, hustle bustle.
The show was different, and we never had props like that for American Tapestries. So having to get everything out in time, including like the tarps, and then picking them up afterwards was stressful because you're all out of breath from performing the show.
These two soloists that weren't together in the ballad, they're pulled apart the whole time, just like we would be in real life, like two people that are meant to be together, but they might be crossing the street at different times. And then finally, they're meant to be together, and that's what happens at the end of the closer.
And then, of course, you have to have the romantic thing because that just is low-hanging fruit, and it makes sense. Two people meet in a club. That's why we had the heart and all of this stuff, and then they come out of the club. And, of course, it's just this truncated film noir kind of 80s thing, but they come out of the club, and they're in love, and the sun rises, Aurora awakes, and we're in.
I think one of my favorite things about 2019's show was watching the soloists transform throughout the entire season. From listening to Katie Peoples' clarinet solo at the very beginning, and for her to basically go from playing this really hard solo to at the very end, she owns that stage. She owns the bridge. All eyes are on her as she's performing this amazing solo, and she's just walking around, flipping her hair, doing this choreo.
Just general takeaways is that the students want to be great, and they take after the staff that's in front of them. And the staff, Mr. Robb and team, when he got there in that fall all the way through, like the students have been rising to the occasion, getting better and better and better and better and better.
I loved when we got the results from CMC, we were all lined up outside the stadium. And when we heard them announce us and like our placement, we were just like in shock. And I loved that because it was like the look on everyone's face. That was so good.
Joining us from Leander, Texas, please welcome the Rouse High School Marching Band. Rouse High School's musical selections include the following: Cycle Song by Imogen Heap, Home by Billy Porter and MJ Rodriguez, and musical selections from Lost and Wicked.
So as we all know, the school year from 2019 to 2020 got cut short with the longest spring break ever. So in the spring of 2020, Mr. Robb, he had already announced to the kids that he was going to be leaving.
I'm not really the one that gets super emotional, but when Mr. Robb told us that he was leaving and said that we were having a new band director and that band was going to be really different next year, it kind of made me realize how much of an attachment I'd grown towards the band.
I knew that Rouse was the home for me. Like that was the place that was my home. And I know that I don't work there anymore, but it's still like my home. That's like where my son will go to high school. I'm not going to teach anywhere else. That's where like I belong. That's the place that I felt the most at home.
When Leander ISD announced that the first 3 weeks of school was going to be virtual, the directors felt pretty strongly that we needed to find a solution that was going to work no matter what.
It wasn't something that could be canceled, and everybody would be involved in it, whether they were in person or whether they were at home. We knew that everybody could participate in that.
We wanted to create something that every student could be involved in, whether they chose to be virtual or if they wanted to come back in person.
There's never a possibility that we were going to, and I think it's because we didn't have time to, but we weren't going to play the victim.
We didn't want their experience to be limited to what they felt was best for them and for their family. And that's whenever we decided to create the virtual 2020 show.
We knew that we're going to make this thing happen, and this is what we're going to do. That mindset, by and large, is what helped our students just get behind it and go.
I mean, with all the things happening, I kind of appreciate it. Even though the directors like to keep secret our show, like it's, I don't know, some like special jewelry or something.
The 2020 show has 4 different parts, has the intro, the opener, the ballad, and the closer.
It's called Home, and so I know that the theme has to be something about home. I mean, home has become something totally different this year. I'm excited to see what happens, because no, I don't know a lot other than like the 4 parts of the show, and you're including virtual recordings and videos, and also the things that we did in person with the drill and the choreography, which I think will be really cool to see put together.
Overall, I think that despite the adversity that we faced, we as in the Rouse Band, have been able to make the program really fun, especially on the kids' end.
I would say it's very different. Like, I thought Midnight City was different, but this year is like a completely new playing field.
It's been a different experience, but different doesn't mean that it's a bad experience. And it definitely has been cool to try new things.
Especially not having like everybody there at the same time, and like working with so many people and trying to get them to be on the same level when they're not there at the same time is really hard. But I think it's still fun. And I like having rehearsals because it feels more normal than it would if we didn't have them at all.
What is band? Like, how are you guys going to do band? And I was like, it's a great question. And the band director was like, yep, great question. We don't know either.
At first, it was a little bit chaotic, trying to do everything virtually, secondary teaching over those full band virtual rehearsals that we were all on.
One of my favorite things about like secondary teaching on like Zoom is like I'd go through and like I'd find a kid and like I'd pin their video. It's kind of like I was stalking them, so it's kind of awkward.
All the DIs, we tried to go through and find everyone that we could and put everyone's hands down, and then we'd leave for 3 seconds and their hands was back up again. And at first I kind of felt like we weren't making any progress because, we were just typing comments and you can only learn so much that way.
But I give them comments and I'm like, you need to work on this, you need to work on this. But like, you're doing so good, like literally pop off, like you're doing such an amazing job. And you could like see them smile.
And then once we started doing those first few in-person rehearsals before we brought our instruments out just to teach, that was I remember coming home to my mom and being like, that was so fun.
But I think that, in all things considered, we're in a situation where we have something that we can make the best of. And I think that's very different from what most band programs are doing. Some people think it's kind of, they're doing this show called Home because they're stuck at home, when it's actually the opposite. The show is about Rouse being our home, trying to tell that story and share it with everybody. And I think that that's really important because, it's the school and the program has become more of a staple name in our activity, but that's not important because the reason that people know about what the band is doing is because of what's happening there.
Many people have asked if we created this show to be virtual, and the answer is no. All of the music, the concept, everything was created before everything with the pandemic started.
Everyone in our band is doing so well in such a hard time, and it's not to get all sappy, but it's extremely moving and it's just uplifting, and it makes me really, really proud of this band.
I knew that Mr. Rob was making a decision to step away from teaching.
And so, when I went through, the life journey to decide that I needed to change what I was doing and be a stay-at-home dad and do what I'm doing now, it changed a little bit to be more about emotionally, what it was like for me to come to Rouse, and what it was like, and this is totally cheesy, but what it was like for me and Mr. Johnson actually to teach together.
Jason was still on, obviously. He was still the director of bands, and he did a great job helping us wrap up our year and keep us focused on what we needed to be doing.
Some of the storyline and ideas changed a little bit from what was originally intended to what the virtual show was going to bring.
And you're trying to come up with, meaning so you can create, emotional arcs. And getting to it ended up being, for me personally, telling the story of Mr. Johnson and I working together. And, at the beginning it was very uncomfortable and very, very lost because we had both left our comfort zones, and you're sitting in this situation where you thought that it was going to be one way and it was different. And through the whole process, from the beginning of us working together to the end, we could rely on each other, but it didn't mean that we were necessarily comfortable. And so as we get through it, the beginning of the show is very much us getting to know each other past being friends, and how we work together. Cycle song is all in odd time meters, so it's never where you feel like it wants to be, and as much as you like it, you don't really know how you feel. And then the closer, it's really me leaving, and it's hard, and that whole process of me going through with my family, how I wanted to leave it, whatever. It was hard for everyone. It's hard for me to talk to the kids. But, in a band program, and I love the kids at Rouse, my favorite kids I've ever taught, but at the same time, the students leave too, the student will be in the Rouse Band for 4 years, and then they'll leave.
We just didn't know what was going to happen. We just kept thinking, I think all of us were hoping that things were going to blow over and it was going to get better.
It's a shame that we weren't able to do it the way that it was meant to be done, because I thought, we were going to have these house props and it was going to be really cool. And we basically want to be about like being uncomfortable and then coming home and realizing that you're where you're supposed to be.
What's crazy to me is that out of those 4 parts, we have only ever played one of them in person. The other 3 students have worked on entirely by themselves at home, no pun intended, to prepare to create this show. It's pretty beautiful to think about how you can create a product that gets everybody together, even though we were separated and at home.
It makes it more exciting, and I am beyond excited to watch it happen. After they release the show, I'll probably watch it 100 or more times within the next hour or something. So it'll be great.
We wanted to tell the story of how the students have responded to the pandemic and how they are now. As we progress throughout the show, you start to see the students come out of their house. You start to see students come together. The in-person students that were in marching band, we recorded them actually marching and doing what they did here so that we could capture it for them. The closer is Defying Gravity and For Good, which are 2 songs from the musical Wicked. So it's all about the relationship of these 2 witches, how an unlikely friendship has changed both of them. And so the song For Good is they're singing to each other about how they weren't expecting to be friends, that because they knew each other, that they were changed for the better and that they were changed for good. The closer definitely turned into a homage for the seniors and how they have impacted the program and how we have hopefully impacted them as they are about to leave and go impact the world. By the end, you realize that the Rouse Band and the Rouse family is home.
Joining us from Leander, Texas, please welcome the Rouse High School Marching Band. Rouse High School's musical selections include the following: Cycle Song by Imogen Heap, Home by Billy Porter and MJ Rodriguez, and musical selections from Lost and Wicked. Drum majors Zane Bisco, Katie Peoples, Arik Vartanian, and the Rouse Band are proud to present their 2020 virtual production, Home.